So recently I've heard a lot of people complaining about support ults in the game and how they slow the game down, make people unkillable, they're not fun to play against, that sort of thing. Some people feel like they should be nerfed, some people feel like they are fine just the way they are, and I have some thoughts on it, so let's talk about it.
How disappointing.
Now, it seems like the vast majority of the complaints around support ults is that they are up way too often, and they just basically, most of them make everyone unkillable, quote unquote, for the entire period of the ult. Now, that's not entirely true. If you have enough burst damage, like for example with Iron Man's ult, with Magneto's ult, you can sometimes snipe people out of a support ult, but there is very few things in the game that can really do it at this point in time. And a lot of people feel like it slows down the game considerably because instead of being able to fight, you have to then wait out this long ass ult that makes everyone vulnerable, and then you can go back to playing the game again. And I think that's a fair complaint to make, honestly, especially because like the fastest charging ult in the game is Cloak and Daggers, which is not a fun ult to have to deal with as often as it is. Now, it's probably worth mentioning exactly which ults we are talking about here. Really, there's four. There's Cloak and Dagger's ult, there's Invisible Woman's ult, Mantis's ult, and Luna Snow's ult. The other ones are largely not to blame for the problems that these ones create. Luna Snow's ult effectively just is a healing AoE around them. Like, you can swap it to damage, but who does that? Literally no one. Cloak and Daggers allows them to do several dashes, and they like emit a kind of smoke around themselves, which will regenerate health on allies and slowly do tick damage on enemies standing within it. Invisible Woman's ult is a bit more interesting. It creates a big kind of cylinder in the middle of the map in which enemies inside the cylinder are invisible to their adversaries and also get a health regen. Surprise, surprise. More of that. And finally, Mantis, whose ult, unsurprisingly, provides healing over time again, but in addition to that is also more annoying in the fact that it provides a speed boost to everyone with it. So just in case you can hit your stuff, surprise, you won't because they are moving more quickly. I also find it annoying that this one isn't entirely obvious while it's active if you missed the voice line being said. Now, that said, while I do empathize with the disliking of having to sit around while a support ult goes off, I also agree with the sentiment that a lot of DPS ults happen to just also be big AoE, instant kill you sort of things. And the support ults kind of need to be able to deal with that in order to counter them. Things like Moon Knight's ult, for example, I personally find significantly more aggravating. Probably because I made Magneto, who has very little mobility. Please ignore the Hawkeye clips, I just happen to have a few of them. I'm personally a Magneto main. So I also, I guess, have a bit of bias here because Magneto happens to have an ult that can counter a lot of these quote-unquote annoying support ults, right? So I might not have as much experience getting cucked by these ults as other players do. There's also the other argument that supports shouldn't be spamming their ults whenever they get it up, just because in higher skill lobbies, you're ideally wanting to save those ults for things like denying enemy ults or following up an enemy's support ult, which does mean that there is less of that constant ult spam you see in lower skill lobbies. Now, neither of those two arguments really helps casual players who are just looking to have a good time in Marvel Rivals. And considering them, I do think that there is room for improvement here. I personally don't feel like nerfing support alts to not provide the benefits they currently do is the correct decision. I feel like if you did that, then it would just make DPS alts way too strong. But I do think there is space to include more alts that are kind of like Magneto's ult or like Iron Man's ult, where they have the ability to actually kill people within the ult, especially Magneto's, just because it requires so much precision to actually do that. I feel like if we had more alts that could like prey on support alts, but required more skill on the part of the user of the ult that's trying to counter the support ult, I feel like that would be a healthy way to address support alts. Alts being not fun to play against from a casual standpoint, which I do think is accurate. Maybe increase the amount of time it takes Cloak and Dagger to get their ult charged. That would probably be the one ult that could stand a little bit of a nerf. Aside from increasing the cooldown on that particular ult, the only other thing I could really think that would make the ults feel better to play around is if they didn't last quite as long. So, like 8 seconds is a long time for the majority of the enemy team to become invulnerable for. I feel like if they were shorter, it would require more of like timing on the support's side in order to pull off good plays with it. But yeah, other than that, I wouldn't want to actually like make it significantly easier to kill people within the ult with just basic abilities. I feel like that would just make them feel very non-impactful in fights, which I don't think anyone wants. Okay, and that's my current opinions on support alts and whether they're too strong or not. I feel like it's a debate that has a lot of nuance for it because there's points I agree with, there's points I disagree with. I don't think they should be completely nerfed. I feel like some small changes to the game, whether it's adding more characters with abilities that can kind of counter those alts, would make things a lot funner for everyone involved rather than just stripping the alts of their power outright. I hope I've been able to portray that opinion well in this commentary. Yeah, so if you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you for sticking around. Let me know in the comments what's your opinion on support alts. Do you think they should be nerfed? Do you think they should stick with the power level they currently have? I love to hear back from people about this kind of thing.